Hi everyone, thanks very much for joining the Chase the Sun training webinar. My name's Izzy, I'm the marketing lead at Chase the Sun, and with us today is Ollie, founder of Chase the Sun, and Toby, who is the founder of The Endurance Habit and our coach today. So in a second, I'll hand over to Ollie just for a quick intro, and then to Toby, who will do about 10 to 15 minute overview of core concepts of training before we move on to the Q&A.
Okay, so welcome everyone. I'm just going to give a quick intro while you're filling out the questions. So one of those is about challenges, and obviously Chase the Sun is a challenge, which is probably why most of you are here to find out and ask about your training and how it's going. But yeah, Chase the Sun is a challenge, right? That's why you're all here. When I came up with the concept, it was never intended to be easy. Yes, of course, riding from coast to coast in one day is tough, but it's achievable and it's tough and achievable. And that's kind of what makes it an amazing kind of challenge that is an extraordinary challenge, but it's accessible for the ordinary cyclist, someone like me. Anyone can do this with the right preparation. And that's really what's key and what we're going to focus on tonight. So it's about preparing your mind as much as your body and also your bike and your tech and practicing what kit you're going to ride in and with. Success at Chase the Sun is not really all about performance as much as it is about motivation and comfort and particularly discipline when it comes to timing and plotting your route and how long you stop on the day, for example. All of these things need consideration, attention, and crucially practice in the run up. And this is the training that we're talking about today. It's more than just about riding your bike for miles and miles. The intention of what you're doing and the variety of why you're doing it is really important. Discipline is the habit. Habit is a theme here of focusing on all of those mind, body, bike factors during this training period. And that is where Toby specializes as the coach from Endurance Habit. So hopefully there'll be some great tips that Toby will share with you today, this evening, that can help you make the adventure over 200 miles not only achievable for you, but if you are prepared enough and disciplined enough, even enjoyable. So, Toby, over to you.
Good evening. So, approximately 80% of people tonight are first timers. Okay, so I will tailor my training tips and the presentation mainly towards those, but I will also look for people who've done it once. There's a couple of people who've done it more than once. Excellent. And I will also aim to go through and see whether we can alleviate some of those concerns because that's what my job is. So I'm a full-time coach. I run a business called The Endurance Habit. I'm a British cycling coach. I'm a British triathlon coach. I prepare riders and runners and triathletes for things like Chase the Sun, things like Le Loop, Mallorca 312, 24-hour time trials, stage racing, lots of different types of training. I'm still involved in racing and training myself because I enjoy it, which is a theme that we'll come back to later on. I have a brief presentation, and I'm going to try and keep it quite brief because it's death by PowerPoint otherwise, and we don't want that. And the reason for that is I want to try and give more time for you to ask those questions. So you've got the chat function. At any point tonight, if you see something, oh, I'd like to ask that question, pop that into the chat, and then Izzy will pick it up, and I'll make sure that I cover it later on. Does that make sense? Thumbs up? Happy? Good. So tonight, some of you submitted some questions before or when you signed up, and they broadly fell into 5 categories. So I'm going to focus on those 5 categories as well as some other items as well. The purpose is also to look at some of the common pitfalls. What can you do to really help you enjoy Chase the Sun? This is not a race, but as Ollie said, this is a challenge. The more prepared you are for a challenge, the more you will enjoy that challenge. We've got about 8 weeks to go, so there's plenty of time, but also, if you haven't been on your bike, get on your bike. That's a quick summary on that one. So, what are we talking about when we talk about endurance training? Really, anything from a 20-minute run through to a 24-hour or 2 or 3 or 4 day event is endurance. The main difference is it's the difference between exercising and training. When you're exercising with a purpose, that is training. So you're trying to achieve something. So every time you get on your bike or you do some strength training or you do some yoga, say to yourself, by the end of this session, I will be able to ... What is the purpose of that ride? Now, some of those purposes of that ride could be, I want to go ride with my friends. So I want it to be social. Sometimes it can be, I really want to try and improve my endurance. I want to try and improve my power. I want to improve my aerodynamic abilities. Lots of things that we can look at when you go and train. And sometimes you can maximize your training by trying to capture or do multiple things at the same time. So, for example, if you go out for a nice endurance ride, like an hour's or 2 hours out on the bike, you could spend 5 or blocks of 5 minutes trying to get yourself nice and aerodynamic on the bike. So hands down on the drops, elbows tucked in, shoulders nice and hunched, and suddenly you'll gain an extra 1, 2, or 3 miles an hour just from changing your body shape. So you're getting that extra speed without actually having to do any extra work. Right, so I mentioned about endurance training, which is the difference between exercising and training with a purpose. So if you think of anything that is longer than 20 minutes, you're effectively thinking of endurance training. So it covers a very, very long spectrum of training. When you think about training, don't just think of the physical side. As Ollie mentioned, think about your kit. Think about the social side. Who am I riding with? Think about the tactical side. Am I going to go hard at the beginning and then easy at the end?
Yeah.
How am I going to tackle going up this hill? As well as then the psychological side. And I'll come back to that because that's quite a key thing, how you're going to break down this ride into small bite-sized pieces so that it becomes manageable. Quickly on this one, do beware of people who talk about the silver bullet. There's the fad, there's this special piece of tech, or there's something that's suddenly going to make you so much quicker and faster, and it'll be a miracle cure. There is no such thing as a silver bullet with training. There is one golden rule that does work, and that is consistency. But there isn't any special tip there. Okay, so these are the 3 pillars, and think of it as a stool with 3 legs. Frequency, volume, and intensity. The best start is to frequency. So if you're currently riding your bike twice a week, by adding an extra 1 session, so 3 times a week, that's the best thing for you to do. Then up to 4 times a week. Then maybe if time permits, you might do 5 times a week. Then look to do your volume. So look to extend the sessions to being an hour, then 2 hours, then 3 hours, then 4 hours, then 5 hours. Then look to add in the intensity. If you only ride easy, but you ride frequently for long periods of time, you will be able to ride Chase the Sun without any problem. So the intensity side is really important, but you must handle that with care. Think of that as the icing on the cake, not the thing you should be doing first. What you're trying to do is you're trying to progressively load stress onto your body. So fitness is training plus rest. And what we're trying to do is you're trying to increase the amount of training stress your body takes. Then you recover, your body adapts and is able to deal with that stress, and then you carry on. A lovely quote from Eddie Merckx, for those who know him. Effectively, he's saying, whenever you can, ride as much or as little as you like, as long as short, but ride your bike. Get out there and ride your bike. So a very brief bit about high intensity intervals, because this is something that a lot of people are, how do I say it, swayed by the media. So HIIT intervals, this is the best thing to do. This is nothing new. This has been around for years and years and years. They are really effective. However, they are quite stressful on the body. They are effectively like a very hard weight session. So you need to use them with caution. Remember when we talked about the cake, it's the sprinkles on the top. You don't want to have too many of those sprinkles. Okay. I'm going to talk a little bit about nutrition because this is something that comes up time and time again. I will make a note that there is a talk coming up in a month's time by a nutritionist. So I am not a nutritionist, I am a coach. However, from observation and training with multiple different riders of different ages over different years, there are some principles that work really well. So the first thing, and I've just put up there a couple of riders, and the next two slides will explain what those two nutrition plans actually sort of mean. I'll do the first one. There you go. So this looks remarkably like the route that you are going to be taking, because it is the route you're going to be taking. This rider took 14 hours riding time, 16 hours total time to do Chase the Sun. For those who like stats, the normalized power was 170 watts. The average heart rate was about 130. He was about 60, I think, at the time. Average pace speed was about 24 k's an hour. A couple of key things here. Number one, his first 100 k's he did in around about 4 hours. And then the last 100 k's did in around about 4 hours. So he got his pacing spot on. This rider spent about 75% of their time in zone 2. When we talk about zone 2 heart rate, think about that as your conversational heart rate, your all-day heart rate. So he really managed his intensity, didn't go too hard, just kept on steadily going. So I'm just going to go backwards because on the nutrition plan, the rider was 70 kgs, around about 65% of his intensity based on his power, 14 hours riding time. He burnt 7,000 kilojoules. Now that's around about 5,500 kilocalories, which is 1,300 grams of carbs. That's quite a few grams of carbs. So if we know this, and a target replacement rate is around about 50%, we can work out that that rider at that pace for that ride should have consumed 50 grams of carbs per hour. That would have been the ideal, the optimum nutrition plan. He actually did 50 grams of carbs for the 12 hours, I think. Then at the end, it sort of fell off a bit. So he was pretty much spot on. Another rider, this is actually a slightly longer ride, 2 blocks of 9 hours, and actually on a mountain bike. So far more stochastic, far more variable, and for a longer period of time. Similar thing, around about 60% intensity. For this rider, they spent a lot more time in zone 1, which is freewheeling, because it was all off-road. So when they pushed hard, they had to push very hard, and then they backed off. The reason I show you that one, again, practical data, this rider burnt 7,000 kilojoules. which is around about 2,000 grams of carbs. So replacement target should be around about 50%. So they should have consumed 63 grams of carbs per hour. And that is, they actually consumed 65 grams of carbs per hour. So they were spot on. I think they're around about 70 kg as well. So roughly a similar weight. So that is a practical from two fairly well-trained riders doing two similar types of event. So what does 50 grams or 60 grams of carbs look like? Most gels are around about 20 to 30 grams of carbs. A bar, like a nutrition bar or something, be around about 20 to 30 grams of carbs. A flapjack, homemade, brilliant, somewhere around about 30 grams of carbs per hour. Banana, 20 grams of carbs. However, if you only eat sweet things, there does come a point when your brain goes, I've had enough of sweet things. So you want to think about a dartboard. Imagine a dartboard. You want some things that are sweet, you want some things that are savory, some things are sour, some things are salty, and if you really are slightly, having the full board, you might have something that's bitter in there. Again, just to mix up those flavors. The reason I say this, we've got 8 weeks to go. With nutrition, it really is personalized. So what might work for Dave doesn't work for Rose, doesn't work for Adrian. They're all slightly different. But the one thing you can all do is you can say, I'm going out for a 4-hour ride this weekend. I'm going to try and have 50 grams of carbs an hour, 200 grams of carbs. I'm going to get it, stick it in my back pocket, and I'm going to see how I feel. How much energy do I have at the end? And the way you know you've got it right is you can come home, you can have a cup of tea, you can clean the bike, you do a few things, and then you have a shower, get changed, and then you can sit down and have some food. You know you've got it wrong is when you come home and you eat the whole of the fridge because you're so hungry. So that's a quick sort of test. Are you eating all the fridge? Means you've not eaten enough food during your training. Another thing to add in is when you're on the bike, there'll be times when you feel good. That's the time to eat. There'll be other times when you don't feel good. Things are not quite right. Your stomach's playing up, whatever it might be. So that might be a time when you then back off and you might just have some water, or you might just sort of have some electrolytes or something fairly sort of simple, or just some plain rice. You won't always be feeling good. So you want to try and to modulate or vary your input depending on how you're feeling. A hydration plan. So a good little session is to go out for an hour or 2 hours, just for the sake of simplicity, do an hour. Before you go out, weigh yourself without any clothes on. Go out for an hour, come back, and then weigh yourself without any clothes on. And you can work out how much you have lost in weight. Now, so if you had a 500 mils of water, then you're then obviously going to take off that 500 mils of water in the calculation. And that will very quickly tell you how much you are losing per hour. You do a 2-hour ride divided by 2. So that's going to give you quite a good little sort of, okay, how much do I need to drink? How many bottles should I be aiming to drink every 2 or 3 or 4 hours? You won't match it exactly. So you will lose weight through the course of the day. So if you were planning to drink a litre an hour, 13, 14 litres, you are unlikely, you probably would have you'll probably sweat more than that. So you don't try to replace everything that you've consumed. Okay. That's those 2 rides. Okay. I'm whizzing through this deliberately. So, some pitfalls to avoid. I mentioned the zone 2. really simple way of thinking about this, if you haven't got a heart rate monitor and you haven't got a power meter and you don't know about that, can you talk? If you can ride and you're chatting away like I am now, great. You're probably in zone 2. That's your all day pace. If I'm having to take an extra pause every time I'm talking, I'm starting to go up into tempo, starting to go up into zone 3. You're very unlikely to be able to maintain zone 3 all day long. There will be times when you might have to push a bit to get over a hill. That's okay. You're looking to spend around about 80% of your training time in this endurance zone. So if you train 10 hours a week, 8 hours a week should be in this talk test training zone. Quite a simple rule of thumb. I mentioned earlier on that fitness is training plus recovery. Now, with recovery, a couple of little things to think about here. If you like saunas and ice baths because they make you feel better, then do them. If you like using a foam roller because it makes your legs feel better afterwards, then use it. If you like having a massage or using a Theragun because it makes your legs feel better, then use it. Whatever you feel that works for you, then use it to help you with that recovery. The number one thing that is absolutely free that we can all make better use of is sleep. Sleep is your number one recovery mechanism. Don't look at your sleep just in the day, like one day's worth. Try to look at it over a course of a week. How much sleep am I getting on an average basis? Don't worry if you're out late one night and you have a big night. Great. Look at it across the whole course of the week. But sleep is the number one thing that will help you, particularly as that training stress increases. So as you start to do some of those longer rides, you start to do some more intensity, then make sure you've got that recovery so that you remain in balance. Off the bike training. So particularly for those who are over 40, you need to get some strength training in. It doesn't have to be massively complicated. It doesn't have to be massively heavy weights, but some simple body weight routines, some simple lunges, planks, press-ups, sit-ups, core routine. That is going to really help you. Don't focus all your time just on your legs, because for long riding, you'll find that your hands, your neck, your arms, your feet, your hips, all those things start to hurt. So you need to look at your training as all of your body, not just your legs. I'm a great fan. All the athletes I personally coach, I get them all to do some yoga for 15 minutes a day for the first month, any new client. And around about 90% of them carry that routine on for the next 1 month, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, people I've been working with. There was something within the newsletter last time called Manflow Yoga. So we've got a discount for Chase the Sun there. Typically it targets for men who are not as flexible as the fairer sex. And it really does work. They've got some particular routines for cycling. Sometimes that could be a recovery process. Sometimes that could be a strength process. So again, you can incorporate that within your training. Little and often is really key on that side. So for those who are injured, what happens if I'm injured? Go and see a physio. Go and get a sports massage. Get them to identify what is the cause of the problem. Problems with your knees. It could be that your saddle height is wrong. It could be that your pedaling technique is slightly wrong. So or it could be something else. Do figure out what it is. You don't want to be training and actually being uncomfortable, because that's not much fun. So if you've got a niggle, go and see a physio, go and see a sports massage and get that sorted out. Okay, the top 10 practical takeaways that I would advise my clients and for you who are going to be doing this. Number one, resilience training. And what I mean by that is this is a massive challenge. In order for you to enjoy that challenge, you're going to have to prepare for it. So when you go out for a ride and it's pouring with rain, okay, yeah, it's not particularly enjoyable. But you know what? You're building that wall. You're building up a little block of resilience on that day. You go out for a ride and you've run out of water. Okay, it's not very comfortable. But again, you've put another brick in the wall. Every time you do something, you're improving and you're providing yourself with that resilience. As Ollie said, this is a challenge. If it was easy, then everyone would be doing it. And they're not. So, give yourself a tap on the back. Well done. You are already signed up for this and you're going to enjoy that challenge. Embrace that challenge. Work out your why. So even right now, you can get a pen and scribble down, why are you doing this? What is it that's making you, why have you signed up for this challenge? What is it, the thing that's going to really excite you? And remember your why. If you've got a partner or you've got a coach or somebody else, just check in with yourself once a week. Okay, how am I doing? Let's be really honest. How do I feel? Yeah, you look great. It's all on track. Fantastic. You're not sleeping very well. You're always grumpy. Okay, maybe I need to back off a bit. Maybe I need to have a couple of days rest. Create your hydration plan. So I gave you a little tip to go and do a sweat test for an hour. Work out roughly how much you think you're going to be needing. If it's hot, you probably might need to bump that up. Your nutrition plan. I cannot say this enough times. If you don't have a nutrition plan and you don't test it out, don't wait till event day, because that will be too late. You need to know what things you like and what things you don't like, what things you can digest, what things you can't digest. I have a runner who was doing an ultra marathon, and we came up with some. He didn't really like sweet gels and other things, so we had some training sessions. One was a pork pie training session, like little mini Melton Mowbrays. Another one was cheese. Another one was potatoes. So we had 3 separate sort of long runs where we try these different foods with varying degrees of success. But the point was we tried them, and some of them worked quite well. Pork pies work quite well, if I remember rightly. Very salty. On your bike, and not just on the bike, but also your clothing choice, your shoe choice, your equipment, things you're wearing. Comfort, comfort, comfort. If you're comfortable, you know what? It's far more fun. You will really enjoy it. Nothing new on event day, mentioned that one. And then probably the last really key bit here is journey before destination. You probably already have spent a long amount of time training, and you're going to be spending a lot more time training over the next 2 months. Enjoy that process. Enjoy that journey. The event itself, think of that as just the icing on the cake. That is the final bit that you are just going to be doing. The making of the cake, everything else is the journey. I'm going to stop there because that keeps it quick, and I'm then going to go through and answer some questions.
Thanks Toby. That was really, really interesting. Before we move on to the Q&A, I'm just going to put the next poll question up. So now we want to know what's going well for you. So it's great to see that most of you are motivated and excited.
You didn't put scared down. Petrified.
Yeah. Okay, fab. Thanks for everyone. Thanks for that. I will move on to the questions now.
I'm just going to go through some of the ones on the chat. There's a couple there that I'll just sort of pick up straight away. Good question from Claire, which is, what can you substitute if you've got a 4.5 or a 4 to 5 hour ride at the weekend, the weather's poor, and you have time commitments? What type of training can I do on the turbo as an alternative? So sweet spot refers to that sort of 85 to 95% intensity. So pretty hard, but your body can recover from it. It does work very well. However, you're not going to do 4 hours of sweet spot, not unless you're really committed. You can do that. That will give you a good replication. However, the long rides teach you that resilience. So if it's wet, unless it's stormy, you know what? It rains in this country, so get out on the bike. Put some decent clothing. Test your clothing. Test your equipment. If you're time constrained, what you sometimes can do is you can do a ride in the morning and then another ride in the evening. So you might be able to do 30 minutes, 40 minutes in the turbo in the morning and then an hour in the evening. You haven't got time to do a 2 hour or 3 hour or 4 hour ride, so you can break it up. You'll get slightly different effects. However, that frequency, going on the bike twice, that will really help.
There's another question here from Ian, who says, what would be a sensible average miles per hour to aim to maintain, e.g. roll slower and take shorter, fewer breaks, or push on harder and take longer / more breaks?
I'll answer that very quickly, then I'll pass it to Ollie. One thing why I showed you those two slides at the beginning was that both those riders, they really cut down the amount of time they weren't moving. So when they came into their aid stations or to have some food, they stopped, they got their bottles filled up, they went to the bathroom, they had some food, they went on. If you minimize the amount of time that you're stationary, it soon adds up. If you stop and you spend half an hour just sitting down drinking a cup of tea, well, sometimes that's quite useful, but other times, if you keep on doing that each time, that cumulative effect of not actually moving, it soon adds up. So be really efficient with what you're doing with those aid stations. Ollie.
Yeah, thanks, Toby. And I think that is one of the key tips. But that's not to say don't stop at all. It's just about being disciplined when you do stop. Those breaks are there on the schedule, and I'll come back to that in a minute, for a reason. And over the 200 miles, it is important to take those breaks and to make sure that you can refuel and obviously get your rest and relief stops as and when you need them. So in terms of average speed, well, what you will get when you find the route guide is released, so you're obviously going to get a GPX, but even more important than that is going to be the route guidebook that you get, which will show you all the maps and all the key stopping points along the way, all the facilities. It'll also have a timing guide in the back, and it has what's called a schedule to sunset. So that plots your progress across the route, taking into account lower average speed for hills. If you're on the south route for going through sections of London and encountering more traffic. So it's weighted, if you like. It also accounts for slightly slower average speed towards the end of the day when you're going to be fatigued. So the schedule to sunset has built in some of the factors that you will experience on Chase the Sun through the route and the distance and the fatigue, etc. It also builds in all of your stops. So there's a 10-minute stop here, a 20-minute stop here. I'll come to the lunch stop. There's a different question on that I'm sure Izzy will pick up in a minute. So those are factored in, and the average speed that you need to maintain, if you're aiming to ride the entire distance solo as opposed to relay, then if you can ride between 15 and 16 miles an hour on your actual rolling speed, and the key thing is to be really efficient with your navigation and know where you're going and not get lost, so you don't do more miles than the route and you don't stop and look at your navigation device every time you come to a turn, etc. And if you just keep rolling, then that will see you well to maintain and even get ahead of that schedule to sunset. The schedule to sunset is there. It does have some contingency at the end of the day. So if you are on the schedule for sunset, you will make it. And there is some contingency for the odd, dreaded mechanical right at the end of the day. But what you should be aiming to do, if you can get to a 15 mile an hour or 15.5 mile an hour average, is you'll actually start to build up a buffer in front of the schedule for sunset, which is where you ideally want to be to give yourself that contingency and that feel good that you are ahead of schedule. You'll be like, oh, I'm getting to this stop. I'm 20 minutes ahead. I'm 30 minutes ahead. That means I can take the allotted time and still then leave a little bit ahead of the scheduled time to leave. So you keep that time in hand. And what you want to be doing over the first 100 miles and the first morning is to be building up some of that time in hand. So you're arriving at the lunch stop and you can take a good amount of time there and have that contingency to then utilize through the afternoon.
Let me answer a question here from Virgin, which is typically talking about the numb bum situation. So 3 pieces of advice I'd give you. Number 1, we are all built slightly differently. So our sit bones and our anatomy is different. There are a wide range of saddles out there nowadays that really do help. I use a brand, a lot of my clients use a brand called ISM. So they have like a prong. So rather than a normal saddle where you actually sit on the saddle, your sit bones go on the top. They look a bit weird. However, they are remarkably comfortable. So go and see your local bike shop. It may be that the saddle is not, the current saddle you've got is wrong. Another thing, look at the angle of the saddle. You don't want the nose pointing up. That's particularly uncomfortable. But you also don't want it pointing down too much because then you're sliding off. So let's find that usually it's around about 90 degrees or effectively flat. And number 3, a really good pair of chamois leather shorts. So get a nice big fat cycling shorts with lots of chamois cream. That does help. When you're on the bike, stand up. Not every 5 minutes, but every 10, 15, 20 minutes, just stand up. Do 5, 10, 20 pedal revolutions. That will also help alleviate that specific pain if you're just you're stuck in one position. With training, if you're riding your road bike for most of your riding, if you've got another bike, a mountain bike or a turbo or another bike, go and use it. I always get my roadies to go off-road just to help balance that training and make it a bit more stochastic rather than just being limited to the road bike. Just mixes it up, which helps. Does that answer your question, Richard? Great.
I think that's a really good point, Toby, about standing up. Like for me, that made such a huge difference. It was something I was really intentional about. So every moment where perhaps I didn't need to pedal, where I could comfortably stand up, or if there was no wind and I could comfortably take my hands off the handlebars and move my shoulders, and just like adjusting your body position whenever it's safe to do so makes a huge difference. You don't want to be locked in one position for 10 to 15 hours.
I had on that body position, I've got someone who's doing Chase the Sun, and they were struggling when they're going up the hills. They were struggling, and I couldn't quite work out why. I then found out was that they were coming down onto the drops when they're going up the hills, which is fine because that's what they were told. I said, no, when you come to an uphill, if you can imagine, rather than being on the hoods, you come onto the tops and you push your bum to the back of the seat. So you all now just wiggle your bum to the back of your seats, if you're on a proper seat, and get your back out. What this does, it opens up your chest. So straight away you can feel your chest is opening up. It also engages all of the muscles down the back and your gluteus maximus, your big bum muscles. They are the most powerful muscles in your body. So when you're pedaling uphill, you're going slowly. You don't need to be aerodynamic because you're going up a hill. Just by doing that, you will really increase your comfort and also your ability to go up those hills. When you're coming downhill, not pedaling much, yeah, get nice and tucked in and get the free speed. Great. So you just by doing this, you're regularly moving yourself around that saddle and using different sets of muscles. So that's something I would strongly recommend. Right, come on, give some other questions. What else have we got? Numb toes. Yes. Okay. Two things here. One is again going if you know someone locally to you, like get a bike fit. So it can be sometimes that your feet, your pedal, your cleat position is splayed, and so you're just getting that rubbing effect on the toes because you're not getting the blood flow. It can be the orthotics inside the shoes. So some cycling shoes, they're quite can be quite performance level, so they're quite wide. So again, you're getting a numbing effect because you're not getting blood flow to that part of the toes. Um, a bike fitting professional, there was a talk last month about that. They will be able to help. Again, your good local bike shop should be able to help that. You want to make sure, 50 miles, you shouldn't be having numb toes after 50 miles. That's not going to be much fun. Numb hands. Right. If you all put your hands up, right. If you look here, this is quite a sensitive area. If you imagine you've got the top of the bike and all your weight is sitting on this section here, that can cause really numb hands, really uncomfortable. So if you put your hands out and if you just slightly rotate your hands, what you're then doing is you're then going to put all the weight on the palm, not on this little U-bit. So just by rotating your hands on the hoods, you'll find that that will really alleviate that discomfort. That's number one trick. Number two trick, some nice cycling gloves. Kit's always good, with lots of nice bits of padding around. That'll help. And number three, as Izzy said, change your body position. So don't just spend all the time on the hoods. Get yourself sometimes on the drops. As soon as you go off the drops, your hand position has completely changed. You've rotated your shoulders. You're bringing your elbows in. The weight then becomes through the top of your palm rather than sitting on this bit here. I have to go right around that bit there. Does that help, Malcolm?
Just while you're looking for the next question, Toby, I can answer some about the lunch stop here. There's a question here, how long should lunch stop be? There's another question earlier. Where was it? About should I skip the lunch stop in terms of maintaining speed? I mean, so I'm going to say there's a reason why on a 200-mile ride that there is a lunch stop. Now, everyone is different, and some people might decide that they just want to keep momentum, etc. But for the majority of people, having a slightly longer lunch stop, it's in the schedule there for a reason, so that you can have that different amount of nutrition, whereas you may have been snacking through your first 100 miles. You can have some of the hot food that's available there. There's more variety of food. You can just have that time to just stretch and rest off the bike. Just, if you can do some yoga, just do a bit of yoga, take time, have a proper refreshment break, go to the loo, etc. Check your bike over, things like that. All of these facilities are available at the lunch stop, and those are what you want to take advantage of before you then go on and tackle that next 100 miles. So it's about a checkpoint really for you to check in with yourself and say, have I looked after myself on that first 100 miles? Am I fit to get on and am I going to be able to make it through the next 100 miles? The risk, of course, if you skip it, is that actually you don't realize how fatigued you are, how hungry you're getting, and you'll end up doing the next sort of 10, 20, 30 miles and slightly grinding yourself into the ground before then you have to stop. So I would say choose to stop. I mean, it's a mandatory stop anyway. You have to log in and register your number. But whether you choose to stop for 15, 20 minutes or the 30, 40 minutes that's allotted for in the schedule, it's well worth stopping. Your body will thank you for it as well as your motivation as you get later into the ride.
Yeah, good point. Right, question here from Ben. Should I include carbs from my drink in my 50 grams per hour rate for planning nutrition? Ben, it sort of depends on you. I hate using the word depends. Personally, and most of my athletes who do long stuff, we use a product called Scratch, Skratch, as in like scratch, but with a K, not a C, which used to be called the Cyclist Secret Formula. Effectively, it's a lemon and lime carb drink with electrolytes, or electrolyte drink with carbs, around about 20 grams of carbs. If you've got that in your bottle, it's really easy to get on board because you know you've got to drink that bottle every hour. Very easy on the gut. That plus a bar, that's your 50 grams of carbs. So it keeps the maths quite simple. It's funny, after about 10 hours, your ability to add up becomes quite limited. So I like to have that, but make sure it's electrolyte plus carbs, not just carbs. You need to have the electrolytes in there. So don't drink just water. Make sure you've got electrolytes because you will be sweating quite a lot through the course of the day, especially if it's hot. You need to make sure you plan that accordingly.
I think a good link there onto the hydration, onto cramping. There's a few questions here about I've suffered in the past from cramping on long rides after around 100 miles. I mean, I think someone else has asked, how long should my training ride be in the build-up? And I think we spoke about this before the session, Toby, about you don't need to ride 200 miles in practice.
Definitely
You just need to look after yourself for one long ride so that you end up finishing a ride of 100 miles or so. 100, 110 miles is more than ample, but you need to finish in a good condition and prove to yourself that you've looked after yourself in terms of nutrition and the amount of effort you've spent so you feel like you could ride further, so you're not encountering that kind of cramping. What causes the cramping, Toby, is I'll ask for you.
So I was just going to pick up that point there that Ollie said, your longest ride. If you've done this before and you've done long rides before, then you would, something like this, you're never going to do the full event beforehand. What can be quite useful is to look at what's my total mileage in the week. So if I'm riding 200 miles in the week, then I don't need to do a really long, 150-mile ride because I'm already getting that volume in through the course of the week. So that's that consistency principle. If I'm regularly doing 200 miles a week and I'm doing it week in, week out, week in, week out, again, I don't need to do that really big long ride because I've got that consistency. My body is adapted to be able to do that. Yes, it's over multiple days, but physiologically it's the same. Cramping comes down to sort of three things generally. One is, well, let me start this. Scientifically, people still don't know why we cramp. There are indications and causes of it. Number one being, the first one being is that you're doing something that your muscles are not used to, or you're going beyond your muscular limits. So cramping can affect where you're operating way too high, you're working far too hard, and your body effectively gets to the point and you get cramping. It is particularly uncomfortable. I'll give you a solution for that in a second. So that's probably lack of training is number one, or going too hard relative to the amount of training you've done. Number two is electrolytes can be a cause for that. So making sure you've got electrolytes in your drinks, that will help. Number three, typically where people remain in one particular position for a long period of time, and then they try to move, and there's some, particularly often you get it with like Ironman triathletes who spend 6 hours on the bike, and they're tucked up for 6 hours, and suddenly they get up and they try and move, and they start cramping. So making sure you're moving and not stuck in one position for long periods of time, that will help. There is a product called Cramp Fix, CRAMPFIX, which is, I've got one here. It's like a little gel, but it's not a gel. It is a really disgusting vinegar type shot. Um, it works really quite well. Um, it's effectively like a bit like pickle juice. You've probably all seen the footballers and various other sports people using pickle juice to help with cramping. I think it shocks the nervous system to the point where it stops the cramping, but a lot of my runners and cyclists have used that to good effect.
We've got 5 minutes left, Toby, so probably time for one more question.
Let me answer Carol Ann's one. So Carol, in the presentation, I said there's a very good rule of thumb, which is 1 gram of carbohydrates per kilo of body weight per hour. So in those examples I showed you, they were both 70 kg riders. They were having somewhere between 50 to 65 grams of carbs per hour. If you're a 90 kg rider, you probably want to be having 90 grams of carbs per hour. If you're struggling with it, then practice. So go and practice. Try and have 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 grams of carbs an hour. Your body, you can train your gut to absorb quite high carbohydrate contents. Use fructose, use glucose. So use the two transport mechanisms, but that'll all be dealt with next week. What else have we got?
Can I just ask, Toby?
Yes.
So, like last year, it was a very hot year, and a lot of people would have done quite a lot of training, probably in like colder months and that sort of thing. Is there anything that you can do training-wise to prepare for the heat? Like I've seen some people on their turbo indoors to try and, with the heater on, to try and in extreme circumstances.
Heat adaptation is a known form of training. It works really well. You have to be quite careful because you have to make sure that your core body temperature doesn't go above a certain level. If you're doing indoor training, if it's zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, so easy and tempo, you can not have the fan on and you can get hot. But as soon as you start to go above a certain point, your heart rate will be a lot higher, 10 beats higher relative to the power you're pushing. So you have to be careful that you don't do that too much. So it can be useful, but just sort of treat it with caution. Cooling wise, so the right clothing, the right kit, allow your bodies to breathe, particularly when you're out on the bike. And then making sure your nutrition and your hydrations are really on point. Because if you get that wrong, you get it wrong in 1 hour, it then exacerbates over time. It progressively gets worse because you've got the cumulative effect.
Thank you. I'll hand over to Ollie now for a quick wrap up.
Yeah, thanks, Izzy, and thanks, Toby. I think we've covered a good amount of ground there. I mean, nutrition comes up again, and I just want to say that we have a webinar on nutrition planned for next month. We haven't quite got the date confirmed yet, but keep an eye on your newsletter emails, and you will see that session and be able to sign up for that and go into a lot more of a deep dive on nutrition there. I mean, Toby's given some great advice there. I like to be like the counterpoint, and I have a really simple rule of thumb, which is you've got to look after yourself in the first half of the ride, and you've got to eat before you get hungry and drink before you get thirsty. And I think there was a tip in a previous webinar about just setting a 20-minute buzzer on your Garmin, whether it's 5 miles or 20 minutes, a little beep, and you make sure that have I drunk, have I eaten, and you just have that little reminder. And you can calculate all you like, but you just got to get into the habit of eating and drinking on the bike at a regular basis so that you don't get hungry. And I think that's probably the number one tip really for success on Chase the Sun, because with hunger comes comfort, comes performance, comes all these other things. So that is a great one to keep in mind. So yeah, just to wrap up, thank you all for coming and contributing to this session's discussion with all of your questions in the chat and your questions in advance. We hope tonight's been enjoyable and useful to you all. And certainly thanks for sharing your own pressure points and concerns on the questions and the polls. And I trust that Toby's tips in answering them will prove valuable to you guys on your journeys to reach the Midsummer Sunset this year. Just to plug as well, remember there are still just a few spaces to sign up for our spring training days in April, the 26th of April in Surrey, Spring Onion, and the 17th of May in Hampshire on the Hampshire Hilly 100, which is very close to where myself and Toby are based. Sign up for those on the Chase the Sun website, news and advice section of the website, and the blog pages there. You can also see all the old previous webinars there where you can watch them. I know there was a few points on numbness and saddle on there, which were covered in a previous bike fitting seminar, so you can look those ones up as well. So that's really everything for me, and just to say thank you to Izzy for chairing and to Toby for your expert advice, and that's it for now. Have a good evening, everyone. See you on the next webinar.
Thanks, Ollie and Toby, and thanks everyone for joining.
Thanks, guys.